God here, and welcome to the Gods of Odds, hosted by two of my favorites, Brad Hoiseth and Dave Dabbah.
Welcome to the Gods of Odds. I am Dave Dabbah, and that is Brad Hoiseth over there in beautiful Southern California. And it is weeks number 6 of your National Football League season, and we've got an absolutely huge show for you today. And yes, if you're wondering, we will be talking about the Chicago Bears, as well as the Cleveland Browns. Brad, how the heck are you doing today?
Well, I'm a little wounded after last week, Dabbah. That was a tough week. I did keep my streak alive for the Vikings. I'm now 5-0 on the Vikings games. That's almost impossible to do given the inconsistent play of the Vikings. Gave myself a haircut this week, Dabbah. Look at that thing. I mean, that's a primed. I saved myself $9.
Oh my God, that's huge, and a trip to the local Supercuts as well. Way to go, Brad.
And then perhaps maybe the most exciting part about this show is the little apology I got coming from Dave Dabbah this week, because maybe we can roll the tape on last week's show and just kind of give everybody a little idea what I'm talking about there. But we had a little side thing going on with Nick Foles, and the Bears came up with another big win, and Nick Foles just keeps winning big games, and he's got his Bears right in the mix.
Yeah, it is. It's hard for me to do the following, but I am going to formally do it. Brad Hoiseth, I'm apologizing to you, one of the Gods of Odds, about how I treated you last week related to Nick Foles. And I can't wait to treat you in a similar way a little bit later in the show. The amazing part of that Chicago Bears game, and the amazing part of the Chicago Bears over the last 2 weeks, is that they're averaging, get this, 2.1 yards per rush, Brad. They're 2.1 yards per rush. Like, I can average 2.1 yards per rush in the National Football League. It is an absolutely amazing thing. So I will formally, give you my apology for how I treated you around Nick Foles. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to come back and do the same thing to you this weekend. We'll just have to see. Anything else really surprising to you last week in the National Football League?
Wow. Is there anything really surprising to me? The games kind of went off. I mean, they put that Buffalo-Tennessee game on Tuesday night. It was actually kind of fun. It was an interesting game to watch. Things kind of got away from the Bills, which, I was a little disappointed in that. But it just seems like one of those games where kind of everything went right for Tennessee and everything went wrong for Buffalo. But it was good to see that the game actually was played. There's more of that, it seems, coming this week. Atlanta now has an assistant coach or something that's tested positive for COVID. They've had to shut down their operations for a day. But just the fact that we're still playing football through a pandemic that appears to be getting worse over most of the map in the United States. I think yesterday the country went over 60,000 cases of COVID. Today it's probably going to eclipse that easily. I mean, you got some states in the Midwest that are really bad, And so the fact that we're still playing football is kind of miraculous to me, but nonetheless, the college ranks are kind of taking their hits. LSU and Alabama is not going to go down this week because of COVID. Or Nick Saban now has it, and all kinds of stuff. Was it LSU? Was they supposed to play Alabama? Is that the game?
No, they were LSU. Florida got canceled, but
that's what it was.
The interesting thing on the Nick Saban story is, he wanted to still sort of coach the game remotely, but they won't let him do that. So they'll let him do practices remotely. They'll let him do all of that via Zoom calls, but he's not allowed to have any direct connection with anybody during the actual football game.
Who did they play this week by chance?
You know what? I'm not sure, but I mean,
they played Georgia. I think they played Georgia. I think that's a really big game, is it not?
Yeah, just to be a fly on the wall in Nick Saban's house this weekend, just to be there watching Nick Saban watch his team play and not have any control over what's happening would be absolutely fantastic. I not to make a joke about this, but I mean, if you're the Atlanta Falcons and your facility got shut down for a day because of COVID, maybe you should just take a page out of the Tennessee Titans, who shut down their facility for 2 weeks. I mean, like, those players, like, they had no real practices in Tennessee. Maybe COVID, if you get COVID, it equals good football, because the Tennessee Titans absolutely just throttled the Buffalo Bills on Tuesday Night Football. It was ridiculous. Look, there were two other things that really sort of surprised me in the National Football League last week. One of those was just watching how well Derek Carr actually played on the road in Kansas City, how well John Gruden coached in that game as well. I know, Brad, you're a big John Gruden fan. I mean, somewhere in your house has to be a life-size poster of John Gruden. I don't know if it's in the garage, but somewhere there has to be that. So that was one of the things that really kind of caught me off guard. I knew it was going to be a close game, but I was really actually impressed by how well the Raiders played on both sides of the ball in their supposed upset victory of the Kansas City Chiefs. And then the last thing, staying in sort of the Bay Area, or bringing it back to the Bay Area, is just how bad this San Francisco 49ers team really is. Look, I thought they were going to be worse than they were last year, significantly worse than they were last year. I had them finishing the season out at 9-7. I did not see them going like 6-10 this year, Brad. And that is really the pace that this San Francisco 49ers team is on. Lots of injuries, but I will say this to you, Brad. It's not just the injuries. They made a lot of bad offseason moves, which are affecting this team and this depth chart at this stage of the game. I mean, how else can you explain getting beat by the Miami Dolphins at home 43-17?
You know, what was kind of interesting in that game is they came out for the second half, and they announced that Garoppolo was not going to play in the second half. And it was funny is that they made it a point to say that Shanahan said, well, we're not taking him out because of his play. We're taking him out just so he doesn't get hurt. Right. So I thought, well, that's, you don't really hear that very often. I mean, that's kind of putting your offensive line on the spot and saying that, you guys aren't playing very well. But obviously that was a tragic loss for the Niners. And, now you got a big game coming up against the Rams this week. It's really gut check time for San Francisco fans.
Yeah, the best part of that is, I don't know if you remember this, but they actually flashed up on the screen, and they kept doing it, too. They did it for like a quarter and a half. Coach's decision to take, like, when is it a coach's decision to take Garoppolo out? I mean, that was absolutely fantastic. All right, so listen, we've got 10 games for you that we think are worth spending some money on for week number 6 of your National Football League season. Mr. Hoiseth, you get the honors, since I had to, apologize over this whole Nick Foles fiasco. Why don't you give us your top or your fifth pick of the week?
Well, being that I'm 5-0 on the Vikings, I'll start out with the Vikings. I'll give the Minnesota fans, I'll throw them a bone early. Minnesota's at home versus Atlanta. The Vikings are a 3.5-point favorite in that game. There's some questions as to whether or not the game's going to get played. Atlanta has to pass some protocols. They got to get through a couple days without any positive tests. But for all intents and purposes, the game is still scheduled for Sunday. I wouldn't be surprised if it moved back to Monday or Tuesday. And you look at these two teams, and you got the Vikings who are 1-4, and you got the Falcons who are 0-5, and you say, wow, what a couple of dogs. But if you look at how they got there, I'm not quite sure either of these teams is really as bad as their records show. I mean, the Vikings, their opponents are 17-7 on the season. There's 4 undefeated teams in the NFL. The Vikings have played 3 of them, and they could have beaten 2 of them. They probably should have. They should have won last week. I still don't know how you lose that game. And they probably should have beaten the Titans if it weren't for just a couple of bad breaks. But then you look at the Falcons and say, yeah, well, they're really bad. Well, their opponents are 18-6. I mean, they've played a really, really rugged schedule so far. So you got to ask yourself the question, which one is going to stand up and get a victory this weekend? The Falcons are not very good defensively. They're flat out terrible. They're number 31 in overall defense. They're number 30 in points scored against on defense. They're number 31 against the pass. And then you look at the Vikings, and they're not very good on defense. They're 26 in overall defense. They're 28 in points scored defense. They're 27 against the pass, 24. A lot of 20s and 30s numbers. Those are never good things when you're talking about defenses. So a lot of this game is going to come down to quarterback play. You got two guys that are very similar. They're both inconsistent, Kirk Cousins and Matt Ryan. Neither one of them has a tremendous amount of, mobility. I think Cousins is probably a little bit more mobile than Matt Ryan, but they're both kind of enigmas in that they can look great at times and they can look terrible. I think what this game comes down to is the availability of Julio Jones, and right now I think that's a huge question mark if you're Atlanta. He missed week 3, and then he returned in week 4, but he only played 15 plays, didn't play at all last week, hasn't practiced this week. That doesn't look good for Atlanta. The Vikings now appear to have found a couple of new toys on offense with Justin Jefferson, and Irv Smith looked really good last week. I think this is a really small spread. The Vikings are only favored by 3.5. I'm taking Minnesota. I say they win at home and they cover the spread.
Yeah, I agree with you on this one. By far the best 1-4 team in football. I mean, that's not going to get you into the playoffs, but they are by far the best 1-4 football team in the playoffs. But, leave it to the Atlanta Falcons, who knew for the last, 24 months that Dan Quinn and their general manager were going to get canned at some point. They literally had to have known that this was going to happen. And then, Brad, after they start out 0-5, and they finally do the right thing and they let Dan Quinn go and they let their GM go, who do they replace Dan Quinn with? They replace him with the guy that is actually leading their defense to that, what did you say, Brad, 31st ranked National Football League defense. So if you're going to make a coaching change, don't you think it's a bad idea to make a coaching change with a defensive coordinator that is currently running the 31st worst defense in the National Football League? I mean, look, I'm glad Raheem Morris is getting another shot after he took over for your favorite coach of all time, John Gruden, in Tampa. But if you remember back to those Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Raheem Morris years in Tampa, they were like 3-13 one year, and then they won like 10 games the next year, and then they were back to bad again. So Raheem Morris, definitely not a great interim coach option for the Atlanta Falcons, which just absolutely shocks me. Now, if we look at this from the world of sports gambling, and we look at this in that perspective, what you actually find when you do some research on 0-5 football teams, this was one of the favorite things I did all week. I said, I've got to know, how do 0-5 football teams perform against the spread historically? So Brad, the answer to that question is 67% of, or actually it's 62% of the time since 1989 that 0-5 teams have covered against the spread. So, if you take that on its surface, you would absolutely go ahead and take the Falcons in this one. I'm going to go with the the other 38% on this one and stick with the Vikings. I just don't think that the Falcons are going to have enough time to sort of figure out what's wrong with their defense to slow down whoever the Minnesota Vikings have at running back. It might not be Dalvin Cook. It won't matter. Gary Kubiak seems to be getting more comfortable in his role with Kirk Cousins as his quarterback at this point. So the schemes have been a lot better the last couple weeks.
Yeah, on top of that, too, I think if you're the Vikings, even though you lost, and it was, what I call it is the Vikings lost with the 3 minutes of hell. I mean, because they dominated the game for 55 minutes, and they just had that 3 minutes that just killed them. But you have to feel pretty good about where your team is at. I mean, the last 3 weeks, you've played 2 undefeated teams, and you had a chance to beat both of them.
Right.
And you won against the Texans. And so I think coming in, you have to be kind of eager to get back on the field and start playing again, because you have to feel pretty good about where you're at, despite the fact that you're 1-4. At least you're encouraged by what you've seen over the last 3 weeks. I'm not sure you can say the same about Atlanta.
Yeah, I agree. All right. So, Brad, my fifth game of the week on my side of the fence, I've got the Los Angeles Rams at the San Francisco 49ers. You've got to give up 3.5 points if you're going to take the Rams in this game. I'll just hold out on all of the suspense for everybody out there, and I'll almost hand over the floor so we can hear Brad Hoiseth ripping on Jared Goff for some unconceivable reason. Jared Goff throws one of the best deep balls inside the National Football League. If you will, Brad, it's a feather when it comes down in Robert Woods' hands. Anyways, so the Rams just seem like they're heading in the right direction, and the 49ers, as I said, in the opening are definitely heading in the wrong direction. This is a homecoming game, if you will, for Jared Goff, who grew up here in the Bay Area. I can tell you confidently that this will be a Rams victory, and they'll certainly cover the spread in this one.
You know, I came into this all prepared to go the other direction on you, and I was going to take the Niners, and I just can't do it. That team looks so bad right now.
Yeah.
As much as I don't like Jared Goff, the Rams they've looked really good at times. I haven't really seen a performance yet where they look terrible. I've seen performances where Jared Goff looked terrible, but they still have enough talent around him to make things work. I think they have a pretty good defense. Raheem Mostert came back last week for San Francisco, and he gives them a little bit more on the offense, I think, than what they have in Jerick McKinnon. But they still don't seem to have much of a passing game. George Kittle's been underutilized this year. The offensive line can't seem to keep guys off the top of, Garoppolo or whoever's in there at quarterback. But the thing I think that's probably the most disappointing on San Francisco so far has been the play of the defense. I mean, the way that the bearded quarterback down there in Miami, Fitzpatrick, went up and down the field on them had to be embarrassing. And you would hope that they would maybe fight back and keep this thing close, but just on the surface, I think you got to take the Rams. So I'm actually going to switch what I was originally going to do, and I'm going to go with the Rams. You made me a believer. Not in Goff, but you made me a believer in the Rams.
Yeah, I mean, the big weakness that I see with the Rams at this stage of the season is that they don't really have like a primary running back. You know, at this point, it's really, running back by committee. And only Bill Belichick really seems to do that well. I mean, like, it doesn't matter who Bill Belichick gets to be his running back. They're going to find a way to make them successful for at least a week. And so that's the one thing that I would say, sort of negative about this Rams team at this point. Lots of weapons on the offensive side of the ball. I do like the running backs that the Rams have. It's just that they're not a top tier running back that can carry the load for a entire season. All right, Mr. Hoiseth, let's get your next pick, my friend.
My next game is the Arizona Cardinals at the Dallas Cowboys. The Cardinals are a 2-point favorite in Dallas. I told you last week that if the Cowboys didn't produce, I was off of them. However, I've had a change of heart. Because I think the way that thing went down last week was just a little bit odd, They have to be, very emotional this week after losing Dak Prescott. But I don't think all is completely lost. I mean, they have Andy Dalton, who's, had moments in his career, but he's a veteran, and I think he can come in and provide some leadership and perhaps get back to what Dallas does best, which is running the football. Arizona is number 19 in rush defense. They're number 20 in yards per carry against them. And it's not like they've played the who's who of running teams. I mean, the Cardinals have played San Francisco, Washington, Detroit, Carolina, and the Jets. None of those are prolific rushing attacks, and yet their rushing defense is not very good. It's also the third game on the road for Arizona, so there might be some jet lag there going on at some point. I think Dallas gets back with a new quarterback. I think they get back to their old friend, the running game. Andy Dalton at quarterback, and I think they just run it down their throats. I expect a big day from Ezekiel Elliott in what should be a very emotional day for the Cowboys. So if you're going to give me the Cowboys and 2 points at home, I'm going to take that this week.
Yeah. This is just crazy. It's just crazy painful for me. 24 hours after, Andy Dalton came in and went 9 for 11. I think Brad for 111 yards passing in relief of Dak Prescott last week. I saw a bunch of people, starting to say, well, the Cowboys might actually be better with Andy Dalton as their quarterback. So I want to dispel that here for a second and say those people are crazy. That being said, Andy Dalton is 31, 32 years old, I think. He's not at the age of one Phillip Rivers, who needs two hands to now throw a pass. That's how bad things got for Phillip Rivers last week. So I think, Andy Dalton's, going to have a good handle on this offense. He showed that he did have a pretty good handle on this offense. This is all about the running game and whether or not they can get this running game going. And that's something that I think they'll absolutely do against the Cardinal defense this weekend.
Yeah, and one more thing to point out is that the Dallas defense is horrific.
Yeah.
And I think that it actually gives Dallas more of an opportunity to do something that'll make them a better team. I don't think Andy Dalton has the skill sets that Dak Prescott has. He's a lot older. He's not as mobile as Prescott. Well, he is right now, but, I'm sorry. I had to go there. But nonetheless,
I think
maybe he isn't more mobile. I don't know.
I was going to say, Dak is actually more mobile right now.
Yeah, but, I think part of the reason Dallas has not been very successful is because they're not playing to their strengths. And, Ezekiel Elliott still to this day is the best offensive weapon they have. They still have a decent offensive line. I don't think it's what it was 5 years ago. But when you've got a really bad defense, you need to be able to control the clock and control the tempo of the game. And the Cowboys just haven't been able to do that all season long. So I think getting, Dalton under center kind of forces their hand and it's going to make Mike McCarthy maybe look like a better coach.
Well, I'm not sure what we can do to actually make that really happen at this point. It's amazing too. I've heard so much Mike McCarthy is an archaic coach talk over the last couple weeks at this point. It's amazing how things have gone in a completely different direction since that night that Mike McCarthy spent with Jerry Jones at his mansion during the offseason. But I think the thing about this is just, as you pointed out, Brad, just about time of possession. And that's why, the Cowboys absolutely need to get back to running the ball effectively. And if they do that, they'll be okay. I have to say, though, too, I'm disappointed in the 49ers. I'm even more disappointed in how the Cardinals have really played over the last couple weeks. They're going to wake up. I don't know if it's going to be this week or if it's going to be next week. They'll wake up. They'll figure something out. They'll have a shot at making the playoffs this year. Too much talent on the offensive side of the ball for that not to happen. But this is a Dallas team with just a ton of weapons. And Andy Dalton is by far probably the best backup quarterback in the National Football League today. So I'll say that. And yes, that was a shot at Nick Foles.
Well, Nick Foles is not a backup anymore. So
that was absolutely a shot at Nick Foles. All right. So moving on to our next game. And this is a battle of the Bay. Brad, your former head coach, John Gruden's Tampa Bay Buccaneers that now have Tom Brady at home against those Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers in this particular game. And as I sort of like take a closer look at this game, I have to tell you, Aaron Jones has been just a total beast. Yeah, instead of starting talking about and saying the obvious about Aaron Rodgers, I thought we'd start talking about Aaron Jones just being just a total beast at running back. He has just been such a beast at running back that it's actually made it possible for Aaron Rodgers to actually drop back into the pocket and not have to constantly scramble for his life, which has really been the big difference in this offense so far. I'm not saying Rodgers isn't going to roll out occasionally, but he's not rolling out nearly as much as he used to. And the other part of this is he doesn't even need to make precision passes. Like, those wide receivers are so wide open. I mean, they're the very definition of wide open. So the schemes that they've been putting together in Green Bay have really worked out well. So in this game, I'm going with the Packers on this game. I have absolutely no idea who you're going with, Brad.
To me, this is one of the most intriguing games of the week. If I was going to choose a game to watch this week, this would be one of them, no question. If you like good quarterback play, you probably have, I think, what most people consider to be the two most cerebral quarterbacks in the game. I've been pretty outspoken in the past. I think Aaron Rodgers is the best quarterback in football. He doesn't have the rings to prove it. Tom Brady does. And so this is an opportunity to put that on display for Tom Brady. The Buccaneers have, they've had some hiccups on offense. They haven't been great. Packers, I'm not quite sure, have played a great schedule so far, but when they've played, they've looked pretty impressive. I mean, it's hard to say that there's anybody right now in the NFC that would have to be more of a favorite than the Packers. I mean, they've been pretty impressive. I still think they have some holes on their defense. It's going to be a real chess match, and I'm not quite sure that Bruce Arians is a great chess player. And so I'm right there with you. I'm going to take the Packers in this game, and once again we're in agreement.
Yeah, I would say Bruce Arians is more of a dart player than a chess player. He does more drinking games than anything else, I would say. It's a early bird special time in Tampa. I'm glad I brought you over to the correct side of the bay in this one, Brad. Look. I've been saying this for a couple weeks, and you've been ignoring me. And so we'll see this week. And then next week, I want to get an apology from you about Mike Pettine's defense, because Mike Pettine's defense is going to show up. And the question is, what's the prop bet on this one? What's the over-under on how many Tampa Bay Buccaneer tight ends, running backs, offensive linemen, and wide receivers will we catch Tom Brady yelling at during this particular game? What is it, like 2 or 3?
I don't know. It's usually a lot.
Like, I'm generally don't root against Tom Brady. I like him and everything, but just watching his meltdown the other day on Thursday Night Football, that's what I'm really rooting for in this game. Yeah, I want to be right and win the money on the Packers, but at the same time, I want to see the Brady meltdown, because this loosey-goosey organization that is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is completely different at the surface and underneath the surface than what he's used to in New England. And at some point, that discipline that isn't there in Tampa Bay is going to continue to shine through. Look, I think the Bucs are I'm starting to think that they're going to implode at some point.
Well, you gave me a great segue because talking about the Patriots. And so my next game is the Broncos at the Patriots. New England is a 10-point favorite. That's a big number.
That's a huge number. Did you write that down right?
It's there. The Patriots are -10. Here's the deal in this game. Denver's a mess. They might get Drew Lock back this week. Melvin Gordon was arrested for drunk driving during the week. Noah Fant is limited with an ankle injury. They already lost their number 1 wide receiver, Cortland Sutton, for the year. For New England, the news is good. They get Stephon Gilmore back after COVID. They get Cam Newton back. They've had an extra week, and this is where the thing really comes full circle for me. as to why you take the Patriots and give the Ben. At the end of the day, New England just got an extra week for Bill Belichick to prepare for Vic Fangio. That's like Bobby Fischer getting an extra week to prepare for me in chess. I mean, that's a brutal mismatch on paper to start with, let alone give him an extra week. 10 points is a lot of points to give up, but New England, almost never loses 2 games in a row. They're still trying to shake off the disappointing loss to Kansas City. The Patriots have been surprisingly efficient on offense. They're number 8 in the league. Conversely, Denver, number 20 in total offense. And facing a really good New England defense, I say take the Patriots and give the 10 points.
Yeah, when I was looking at this, I was like, God, 10 points? Like, seriously? And then I did the same thing, Brad. I was like, Bill Belichick for 2 weeks to scheme against Nick Fangio. And then you sort of take a step back, too, and you say, well, who's going to be healthy to be the running back in this game? And, who do the Broncos think they're going to be up against? And they're probably like, well, Damian Harris ran for, 100 yards in the last game that the Patriots played. And so I looked at all of this and I said, well, that just means Damian Harris is going to just play special teams primarily against the Broncos. And they're going to go with Rex Burkhead as their feature back this weekend. You just don't know, right?
You never know. And with the Patriots, they actually looked pretty good against the Chiefs, I thought. I mean, they had their chances there. They just, Hoyer just made a couple of just incredible mistakes on back-to-back drives. Otherwise, they had a really good shot at winning that game. And for a lot of people that watched the game, they thought the Patriots were the better team for about 2/3 of that game. So, New England's got an extra week to prepare for Vic Fangio and that offense. I mean, it would seem to me that Denver's going to have a hard time scoring points. And like you said, with New England, now that you got Cam Newton back, he's going to be a big part of what they're going to do. I just don't see things going well for Denver.
Yeah. All right, Brad. Let's move on. I've got a Monday night football game for you. We've got 2 this weekend or this Monday night, and I've got the Chiefs at the Buffalo Bills on Monday night. Speaking of good coaches with a little extra time to sort of scheme together. Without getting into all of this, the Buffalo Bills are going to be the AFC champions this year, and Josh Allen's heading to the Hall of Fame. And I know there's a big Josh Allen fan club developing somewhere in and around your house these days. And I have to say, I love Josh Allen, but I'm just not as sold on him as some other people are at this point. That being said, when you look at this game and you realize that the Chiefs, if you take the Chiefs, you've got to give up 3.5 in this one. That it's worth every penny because Andy Reid's going to have that team ready to go. Brad, this is what I call one of those send a message games. And this is like, when you're king of the hill, like Brad's talking about chess. He's made 2 chess references already. It's almost like Brad Hoiseth prepped for this show this week, and he watched 2 seasons of Jeopardy.
I threw in a Bobby Fischer reference.
Bobby Fischer reference. It's amazing. So I just think this is a send a message game. The Chiefs want to win this game. Not that they don't want to win every other game, but they're going to pull out some extra wrinkles to get it done. And the other thing is this Buffalo Bills running game, this Buffalo Bills running attack is not what it needs to be to give Josh Allen the kind of time that he's going to need. I'm not saying the Kansas City Chiefs have the best defense in the league, but I just believe Andy Reid's going to outcoach the rest of that Buffalo Bills coaching staff in this one.
I'm intrigued to watch this one because I think you really have 2 of the better young quarterbacks in the game. And they're different in their styles of play. But Allen kind of reminds me of a younger Ben Roethlisberger, except he's a little more mobile than Roethlisberger. He's a lot more mobile than Roethlisberger, but he's got one of the quickest releases I've ever seen. The biggest problem that I saw with the Bills last week, and I think if I was going to bet this game, I would probably wait a little longer during the week because I want to see if John Brown's going to play.
Right.
Without John Brown, like you said, that running game needs to be better, and it's just not. And so, And it's not even that it's not better; it's that they don't even try to run the ball.
Yeah.
And so I think they have to come up, if they're not going to have John Brown, with a little bit better game plan rather than just, throwing Josh Allen back there and telling him to throw it 50 times a game. I like the line if I'm Buffalo. I think 3.5 is a lot playing at home. I think it's more of a field goal game. I think the Chiefs have got some question marks. I mean, they probably should have lost the Patriots. They didn't look particularly good in that game. They really got beat pretty soundly by the Raiders, and I think they're going in limping a little bit. And I know it's a message game and all that kind of stuff, but both those teams got a message they want to serve, and that last week was a fluke. And so I like the home team in this one. I'll take the 3.5. I'll take the Bills.
Yeah, well, we should just we should do next week's episode portion of the show when Brad was wrong, because you will be wrong.
Look, you're the one that made the mistake and said you would give me an apology. I'm not going down that road.
So the one caveat I'll give you on this, Brad, is it's still we're still not sure where Le'Veon Bell's going to end up now that he's gotten out of the shadow of Adam Gase. I'm not even going to get into Adam Gase. If you want to see some good Adam Gase videos, check out the Mighty Rip channel. We've got a couple of them up there. But Le'Veon Bell, one of the teams he's rumored to sign with is the Buffalo Bills. And if he signs like before this podcast goes live, there's a chance that you would have Le'Veon Bell ready to go on Monday Night Football. And while I don't think he's the same running back he was at his prime in Pittsburgh, I still think he's still got the occasional burst ready to go. So I would be pretty excited if I were a Buffalo Bills fan, if I were able to get Le'Veon Bell on my team.
This is definitely one you're going to want to keep on the Heater app, though. How's that, Dabbah?
That's right. That's right. Hey, which reminds me, you should definitely check out our friends over at Heater. It's an absolutely great app. So we've got 10 games here that we picked. You dive into the Heater app. You drop in the games that you're playing. It's all there for you, Brad. It's the easiest thing to do in the world. And then you just throw in, the spread, and then it's just there for you. And then you get reminders throughout the course of the day. So it gives you time to go shopping at Target, or if you can still find a Sears outlet somewhere in America, it gives you a chance to spend a little bit of time with your wife and see how you're still doing on your bets.
I'm just curious, did you have that Bears game locked into the Heater app last week?
I did, and I'm not going to show you it.
Okay. Well, on to my number 2 game of the week. We have the Ravens at the Eagles, and Baltimore is a 7.5 point favorite. Remember I said about the Ravens last week? You were one that picked the game, and I said, this is a really good team, and this is a really bad team. And you made fun of me. We all laughed and hooted and hollered, but I was right. The Ravens just absolutely destroyed the team they were playing because they're a really good team. And I'm not even sure they're a great team, but they're a pretty good team. But one thing they are is they're pretty darn good in the trenches. Philadelphia has been able to keep, Carson Wentz upright. The number 30th in the league in sacks allowed. They're facing one of the better defensive fronts in the league. Baltimore's number 5 in the league in sacks. They average nearly 3.5 sacks a game. That number will go up this week, especially if Philadelphia has to play catch up. The Ravens have taken some heat about their offense and their running game, and I think they're getting a little tired of hearing about it. And so it's the same situation for me. Baltimore's a really good team. Philadelphia is really bad. The Ravens are given 7.5. On the road, I don't care where it is. I say Baltimore tries to, they're getting tired of the teams like Buffalo and Kansas City and now Tennessee starting to steal their thunder. I say the Ravens send a message to the rest of the league this year, and they win big at Philadelphia.
Okay. So Doug Peterson, the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, it just dawned on me. I just had a moment of clarity. I just had an absolute moment of clarity. Doug Peterson, really good football coach. He's won the Super Bowl. His teams have not been supported by the front office in any real way with any real strong talent. They seem to do a nice job, picking wide receivers up off of the street and turning them into good wide receivers. I mean, just look at what happened last week against Pittsburgh. If you look at that, the Pittsburgh Steelers are definitely a better team than the Washington football team is, who the Ravens took care of last week. So it's not that I don't think the Ravens are going to win this game. I just don't think they're going to cover this spread. And I think when you actually look at, Doug Peterson, he's not Raheem Morris. He's not going to allow this Philadelphia Eagle team to go 4-12 this year. They are going to play hard every single week. They're going to figure out how to get, 7 or 8 wins somehow. And Doug Peterson is that good of a head coach in this National Football League. Harbaugh is also a really good coach. Love Lamar Jackson. There is a strategy of slowing Lamar Jackson down. I think we all know what it is at this point. I don't think that Philadelphia has enough talent yet to pull that off. And I think they have too many injuries to make that a reality. But I'll take your 7.5 and go with the Eagles.
Yeah, I think you're headed down there. I'll tell you what, I'll offer an apology. I'm going to go Dave Dabbah, and I'll offer you an apology if they can keep that spread.
All right. So moving on, Brad. This is my game of the week. It is my absolute game of the week that I cannot wait to watch, and it involves Kevin Stefanski, Big Ben Roethlisberger, and of course the powerhouse that is Baker Mayfield. Browns at Steelers. Such an intriguing game. If you take the Steelers, you got to give up 3. If you're going to go with the Browns, you obviously get 3 in this game. When I look at this game, I look at an improving Cleveland Browns team. I look at a Cleveland Browns team that I can't believe is 4-1. I can't believe a new head coach in Cleveland has actually sort of worked out in his first season. Because usually the pattern in Cleveland is the following. There's a new head coach. They bring in a new quarterback, and they struggle for 2 years before he gets fired, and then it's rinse and repeat. And this is the first time that I can remember in the last 20 years where a new head coach in Cleveland has actually been sitting at 4-1. So I think the idea to bring in a methodical, scheme-driven offensive coordinator who's proven that he can win with a quarterback that might not have the strongest arm in the National Football League, has been really good for Baker Mayfield to this point. I still feel like Baker sort of thinks he's better than he actually is. And what that basically means is he tries too hard in certain situations to get a football where it should not go. So I think when I look at this game, I know Nick Chubb is actually going to be out. You've got a really good replacement instead of Nick Chubb. And then you've got the Steeler D. Brad, how many points did the Steeler D give up to Doug Peterson and the Philadelphia Eagles last week? Look, I am just saying that this Steeler defense, especially when we get into the secondary, is not what you think it is. It is a misrepresentation of a secondary at this point. Look, good coaching makes a big difference. I love Mike Tomlin. He's a good coach. He knows how to coach defensive backs. He was one. But they are holding it together in Pittsburgh in the secondary at this point. So I just believe that as great as Chase Claypool was, the rookie, is he a tight end or is he a wide receiver? I don't even know. Coming out of Notre Dame, had 4 touchdowns last week. I'm going to take the points and run with the Cleveland Browns. And this is a one-time only thing. Like if Cleveland leaves me down, I don't know that I'll pick the Browns again this year.
Well, they'll let you down. How's that? Let me break the ice there right away, okay? First of all, there's some reports right now that OBJ was sent home today.
I saw
because he's not feeling well.
Yeah.
So This is one of those games that might be kind of on hold here pretty soon. If he had to get tested for the coronavirus, if that comes back positive, this thing could be on hold for a little while. And, Baker Mayfield's a little bit dinged up after last week. He took some shots. He's not feeling really good. Jarvis Landry's left the game for a period of time last week after he took a shot. Like you said, Nick Chubb. And I think that Cleveland, despite the wins, is coming in a little bit dinged up. Pittsburgh's a little more healthy. They know how to win games like this. Cleveland still hasn't proven how to win a game like this. They haven't been in this situation very often. And so I'm going to take the Steelers. I'm going to go opposite there. I think it's a good game. It's an intriguing game to watch. I mean, everybody's been waiting for Cleveland to finally have a good football team and maybe make the playoffs. But I just think they're a little bit dinged up. There's a lot of injuries there, and I don't think they really have a quarterback that has won a big game like this. So if you're going to put it Roethlisberger versus Baker Mayfield, I'm going to take Roethlisberger right now, even though he's at the end of his career. But he always seems to find these wide receivers and make them into superstars. I mean, Antonio Brown comes to mind. There's always some guy that seemingly you've never heard of that 3 weeks from now could be the next guy that everybody has to pick up for their fantasy football team. And so he just finds a way to win. I just think it's one of those games that Pittsburgh, again, finds another way to win, and Cleveland finds another way to lose. I'm still not entirely sold on the Browns. I know it looks optimistic. They're fun to watch. They got some exciting young players. But this is a big game, and they do come in a little bit dinged up.
Yeah, they definitely are dinged up, and I just there's just something about this this I can't even believe I'm going to say that. And maybe it's just because they've been so bad for so long. I'm an optimistic, hopeful guy that the Cleveland Browns will one day sort of turn things around. I mean, what's worse for a Cleveland Browns fan? A Ravens Super Bowl or having to keep having to keep hiring coaches and firing general managers every 24 months in Cleveland. All right, Brad, what's your next pick, my friend?
Yeah, and one more note on that game. This is another two teams in the AFC that are kind of fighting for that notoriety. We talked about Tennessee and Buffalo, and we talked about Kansas City, and all those teams that are trying to right now say, hey, look at us. We're the best team in football. Raiders, I think you can now start to throw into that group. So, the Steelers and the Browns have been somewhat overlooked. So it is a fun game worth looking forward to.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's just real quick. It's funny. I've had the Steelers in our top 10 power rankings for the last 2 weeks. And you'll like this, Brad. I moved Cleveland into the 10th spot this week. That's how much I believe in Kevin Stefanski. On to your next pick.
Okay, my final game is the Texans at the Titans. One thing we found out on Tuesday is Tennessee is a pretty good football team.
Yeah.
And they're a very, very different team when they have A.J. Brown on the field. They looked a lot more on Tuesday like the 2019 Titans than they've looked so far in 2020. With Brown out of the lineup, teams were stacking the box. They were making it hard for Derrick Henry and Tannehill to operate. With Brown back, they had a decent night running the football, opened up some passing lanes for Tannehill. I think he was 21 of 28, something like that. What this comes down to is Houston is absolutely terrible against the run. And I think Tennessee is desperate to get a really big night from Derrick Henry. The Texans are giving up 160 yards a game on the ground, 4.7 yards per carry. Henry hasn't really gotten out of the box yet in terms of if you got him on your fantasy team. I expect a really big night from Derrick Henry. Tennessee, they're riding big after their win on Tuesday night. The Titans are fresh after missing that week for the coronavirus. It's a 3-point spread. That to me seems like a really small spread for a game at Tennessee against the Houston Texans team that's just frankly not very good. So to me, that was the easiest pick of the week. I'll take Tennessee and I'll give it a 3.
I'm with you on all of this. My favorite part of that Tennessee victory was when Adam Gase and the New York Jets decided to release Le'Veon Bell in the middle of that football game. on Tuesday night, and the irony of his former quarterback in Miami, Ryan Tannehill, who has, suddenly turned into like, he's literally, Brad, I don't know if you know this, but he's a top 5 quarterback as of today. He's a top 5 ranked quarterback in the National Football League. He's the 5th ranked quarterback.
Hey, in my fantasy football league last year, Ryan Tannehill scored the most points in the league the second half of the season.
Yeah.
He's got some really dynamic weapons there. Jonnu Smith's a good-looking tight end. A.J. Brown, to me, is an absolute beast at wide receiver. You got Derrick Henry, who's just shoving guys around on the field. I mean, that play that he made against the Buffalo defender last week had to be, Josh Norman had to be incredibly embarrassing for Norman, but he just took him with one arm and basically just threw him out of bounds. And so this is a guy that's got a lot of talent around him. He did not have that kind of talent at Miami. And he seems to fit in pretty well with that offense. And I think he's a good leader. He's a guy that he'll get after his guys on the field.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest issue in this particular game is, like, the Texans, still have a lot of talent. It's not like they didn't, play well last year. There's still enough talent on this team for this Texans team to actually win this game. It's just and then you've got the Tennessee Titans possibly overlooking the Texans because they've been playing so bad. So there's that factor where good teams sometimes just play at the level of the teams that they're playing against, and I think we might see some of that in the first half of this game. But in the end, I believe Mike Vrabel will get it done in Tennessee. All right.
Yeah. I think if there's one shining, silver lining for Houston is that Tennessee had to play a football game on Tuesday night, and so
right,
Houston might be a little bit more fresh.
That's right. All right, Brad. Yeah, I know you've been waiting for this. You've been waiting for the last big pick. And I wasn't sure where I was going to go with this, and I ended up sort of changing this around a little bit. I was going to do a straight up, Bears at Panthers, and then I switched it to an over under, and so I don't know if you saw that, but I switched this game to an over under.
I saw the switch up. Trust me, I saw the switch up.
and as I sort of look at this game, Nick Foles played well enough to beat Tampa. I will, admit that. And I really do, like Matt Nagy as a head coach. I think he's doing what he can do with the pieces that he has. He can look at the stats just like you and me. He knows that, that is his team over the last 2 games is averaging, and I said this earlier, but it's fact, 2.1 yards a game per carry. And that's just not going to get it done in the National Football League. And he knows that. So they're not, maybe they'll try to run the ball for a little while. But if they're going to beat the Panthers, they're going to have to, rely on Nick Foles at some point. And the way to rely on Nick Foles at this stage of his career is to just make sure he's throwing to wide open wide receivers and tight ends and running backs. So it's all about scheme. It's all about scheming people open. It's not about Nick Foles going through 4 different progressions before he passes the ball. There's a primary and a secondary, and that's what Matt Nagy has running in this particular offense. As of right now, I'm not sure that Christian McCaffrey is going to be back. I think Matt Rule has actually done a nice job sort of beating the teams that, quite frankly, we didn't really think he was going to beat. Teddy Bridgewater's played well. There's a former New York Jet who has, like all the other former New York Jets, has turned into a great player once he got out of Adam Gase's shadow in Robbie Anderson. So I think, this is a good game. I'm not sure who's going to win, but what I do like is actually the under on this, just because I don't believe we're looking at any kind of explosive offensive output on either side of the ball.
This is, I think, a fun game because these are 2 teams that really, I think, are 2 of the surprises in the league. The Bears, I don't think anybody expected them to be 4-1. Carolina is, what are they, 3-2, and they've, I think most people had them targeted for last place, and not knowing how Teddy Bridgewater was going to play after not really playing for a while. And you mentioned Bridgewater's looked really good. I mean, how much would the Vikings love to have Teddy Bridgewater back right now? I mean, I think they would welcome him back in a heartbeat. They've gone 3-2 without Christian McCaffrey most of the way. And so you really have to applaud them. You got two veteran quarterbacks, and anytime you see that, I see production on offense there, Mr. Dabbah. And so I'm gonna disagree with you here. I think this thing goes over. I think Nick Foles has a better game playing a worse defense, and I think Teddy Bridgewater. I think the Bears have got a better defense than Carolina, but Bridgewater has beaten the odds so far this year, and so I think this game goes over. It's only 44 or 44.5. That's a pretty low under. If somebody scores 27, it's going to be pretty difficult to keep that under, and so. You've gone against Nick Foles before, and you've been wrong. And I'd say that you're going to go against Nick Foles again this time, and you're going to be wrong. So I'm going to take the over.
All right. Well, we will see, and I will apologize again if I'm wrong about this one. But
I need I need a little more sincere apology. I think this time. I mean, I need to see like a Bears hat or a Nick Foles
that's
jersey.
not allowed. When I was a kid, my dad would, he'd go on business trips, and then he'd always bring me something back. And so he was in Chicago, and he actually brought me back a Chicago Bears shirt one year. And I was polite, and I took it, but it never got worn. I can tell you that.
So are you telling me you weren't even a fan of their great running back Walter Payton? I mean,
no. I love sweetness. Loved the '85 Bears. I'm not like anti. I'm just not wearing any of their gear. That's all. That's not going to happen.
Understandable.
Hey, Brad. So one quick question before we sort of get out of here, and it's sort of close to something I know you've been following a lot of so far this season, and that is the Indianapolis Colts. And what is it? And I love to put you on the spot, as you did your Spock look there. What is it that these Colts are going to eventually need to do with Philip Rivers? Because I said it at the beginning of the season, and the rest of the media at this point is sort of finally catching up. I'm not kidding you. I tuned into a portion of the game, and he literally used two hands to throw a pass in the game. And it was like I paused it, I stopped to make sure I was seeing him correctly. And for a moment, it was like there was a second hand on the ball to try to throw the ball 10 yards. The word is out that, his arm strength is gone at this point. It's not that he doesn't know what's coming. It's not that he, can't read defenses. It's not that he can't set his offense correct. It's just that his arm strength won't allow him to be successful the way the Colts are going to need him to be. So what's going to happen? Are they going to have to bench him?
I don't know what their other options are. I mean, they're spending a lot of money on the guy. I don't know what reports they were getting. The word was out last year that he didn't have any arm strength left.
Yeah.
The word was out 9 years ago that he didn't have any mobility. I think they thought maybe they were going to run the ball a little bit better. I don't think that running game has lived up to expectation. They drafted Jonathan Taylor, and they were predicted at the beginning of the year to have one of the best offensive lines in football. And I don't think they've really lived up to that hype. I think they've relied on a really good defense so far, which was kind of exposed last week a little bit.
Yeah.
But Philip Rivers is one of those guys that you just put out there, and you hope to methodically move the ball downfield. And if your defense plays well, he's going to make smart decisions. And but they don't have a tremendous amount of tools around them. T.Y. Hilton's getting pretty long in the tooth at this point. Mo Alley Cox looks like a pretty decent young tight end, but I think the biggest disappointment in Indianapolis so far has to be the running game. They just really haven't gotten that thing going, and if you're going to take the pressure off of a guy that doesn't have great arm strength and not a lot of tools, you got to be able to run the football better. And I think Indianapolis is a good football team. I think we're one of those bubble playoff teams. I think you're going to see them fighting with a team like Cleveland for the playoffs down the road. But there's no mystery about Phillip Rivers. His arm it just doesn't have what it used to have. He has zero mobility, and if you don't have a running game, he looks a lot less effective.
Yeah, I think that injury to Marlon Mack at the beginning of the year at running back really just disrupted what was going to happen. But I think what we're seeing happen is just accelerated. I think we would have seen it, in week 8 or 9, even if Marlon Mack had been there, because at some point you were going to have to rely on Phillip Rivers, and Jacoby Brissett is their backup quarterback. That's their option.
It seems to me like with Indianapolis, I don't know what the expectations were at the beginning of the year. They always seem to me like one of those teams that they hope to make the playoffs. That's just, you look at the AFC and you got Kansas City, you got all these teams that, are perennial powers. Like the Steelers have won, a ton of Super Bowls, and you got the Patriots and all these teams. And they just seem to me like an organization that is, our goal is to make the playoffs. We'll get our one game in the playoffs. And for the most part, that's kind of the path they're on. They might make the playoffs, and they don't ever seem to reach for higher goals. And I think part of the reason is they've really never figured out the quarterback riddle. And until they do that, I don't think they're going to be a team that's going to compete for anything big.
Yep. All right. Good comments as always, Mr. Hoiseth. It is, thanks everybody so much for tuning in to it's week 6, Brad. I can't even believe we've gotten this far. I was really thinking this whole thing was going to get canceled. This whole National Football League season was going to fall apart completely. So I'm happy we're getting a week 6. I hope we get a week 7 and more as well. That is Brad Hoiseth right over there in beautiful Southern California. I'm Dave Dabbah right down the street from where Jared Goff played his high school football for the Gods of Odds. Wishing everybody a fantastic rest of your sports week.
God here, and thanks for tuning in to the Gods of Odds. For more semi-witty sports commentary, please make sure you check out mighty.rip. Okay, go ahead and kill the music now.